Let me give you a real world example from my own life. A few years ago, post pandemic, I had lost my job and I split up with a girl that I was in love with. And I found myself very alone and isolated. And at the time, I felt all this anger and resentment towards my dad. I blamed him for not being more present in my life and not being a better role model. And I believed that his failures were a major contributing factor towards my seeming inability to get my own life in order. So much so that I asked him to come and meet me for lunch so that I could express some of the things that we never addressed. And I did my best to not make this sound like an attack, but after I said what I needed to say, I noticed my dad struggling to get his words out in response. And he started sharing reasons for things that happened that made no sense to me. And he started getting frustrated when he couldn't communicate. And I realised that my dad was stuck in a trauma response. I'd touched the shame wound of his, and his response was like that of a little boy being scolded. And I sat with this, going over it in my head for a long time, and what I realised was the anger and resentment that I was directing at my dad was actually an attempt to offload the shame and discomfort that I felt because my life was a mess. If my life had been great, I wouldn't have given a second thought to my dad's actions. Now, as I said earlier, projections only stick if there's a seed of believability in them. I do wish my dad had been more present, and I know he has regret about it too. And my unconscious used that hook to try and offload some of my emotional burden. Now, people need to take responsibility for their healing, but they are not to blame for their trauma. And at the same time, when we realise that our unconscious actions have hurt others, we should absolutely take ownership and do our best to make amends with the people that we've hurt.